time where the movie started, facing at a photo they've taken. Space tree flying through the skies and battles happen everywhere.
Thanks for joining me, action figure collectors. Here we have the Mythic Legions Thumpp. So this was made by the Four Horsemen Studios. This character belongs to the Legion of Aether, and he looks pretty awesome. But we'll go into him more in depth. So right here is the little bio. So if you want to pause that so you can read it, go ahead. And this is him with all his gear. He comes with this blade, which is like half of a connecting piece. I think this has been seen in other figures, such as the female vampire knights. Thumpp obviously comes with this huge warhammer, and by his name, you'd expect this to be his primary weapon. And we've seen this weapon before. It comes with this head right here and this pole piece. This pole piece has a spiked end as well, but it's nice and big. It is much bigger than he is, but given its weight and distribution, may be hard for him to wield, especially with these pauldrons that's attached to him, which kind of limits his range of motion. He also comes with this axe in the back here that I've attached to the little weapons hilt or belt, and it's got a nice wood handle with this kind of gunmetal colored axe blade, and that looks very nice. And happy to have these weapons. And obviously it comes with this little hilt here. Let's turn this thing off and look at this character more closely. So he comes out of the box with the shoulder pauldrons off, and this little weapons hilt is not on him, but everything else is on him. So he's got this kind of fat face, which seems to look even bigger when you put the shoulder pauldrons on, but his body is really small and skimpy. And now in the back, he's got this really bad lollipop syndrome, so it doesn't look that great when you're looking at him in the back. And obviously he's got these, Four Horsemen like pauldrons on the back, or holes in the back to attach the pauldrons. It's covered up. You put the pauldrons on, turns the holes in the back, but that gap in the back is still there. So if you have him looked up, it looks less bad there, but then he's looking up all the time. So I guess it's good if he's fighting someone taller than him, which I guess will be most of the time, but he's probably not looking up that high. He's got some nice sculpt and paint detail, and you can see he's got these little light green plaques on his chin there. This is an all new head sculpt. He's got a nice little dent on his helmet, and the face is bigger than most of the other little goblins, but the body is your typical goblin body. It's very small and skinny. Paint detail is nice. There's a multitude of different colors on here. Then I got this orange patina, kind of dry brushing on here in terms of the edges, which gets right in the cracks of his armor. He's got this silver color at the little rivets, and he's got silver also at the chainmail areas. So again, with most Mystic Legions, you buy these guys for their sculpt and their paint paint job, but you know, their articulation is okay, but it's a little antiquated. And then the back always looks kind of ugly unless you put a cape or these pauldrons on, or you just don't look at the back. So his head is on a ball peg. This collar piece comes off very easily. It's pegged in here in the back of his armor, and he's got good range of motion of his head. He can tilt side to side. He can spin around, and he can look up and down. Just make sure that the helmet doesn't get caught up on these little claws on this part of the collar. Ears are made of soft material, so if he falls, it's not going to crack off and break. So that's nice. His arms can go all the way around when he doesn't have the pauldrons on. They can go about 90 degrees. And he's got these big elbow pads, which kind of gets hindered a little bit because of the gloves. And that's kind of my biggest gripe on this figure is the armor is just so big on him that the sculpt kind of limits his range of motion. He's got single jointed elbows, so goes about 90 degrees, maybe a little bit more, and it can twist side to side as well. He's got rotation at the gauntlets. His wrists can flex in and out, but does not flex up and down. That's just a weak. This spins around right here, and it's only kind of moving up and down a little bit, I think, because it's a loose joint. Let's see if the other side, again, probably a loose joint. It's not meant to flex up and down like that, but it does move in and out. He's got a ball peg at the waist articulation, so this can come off, so you can attach this waistband here. There is a diaphragm joint as well, so you'll get movement from up top here and below here, more from the diaphragm joint. You can move to the right this much, you can move to the left this much, you can move backwards, very little from the diaphragm joint, but a lot from the hip joint or the ab joint. He can move forward this much, and the hip moves, the ab moves about that much too, but more from the diaphragm joint. This piece goes right here and it's detachable. You can remove this whole girdle thing if you wanted to. And again, it's like his armor is too big on him. It looks nice, but functionally it's kind of a mess. So this guy isn't as fun to pose compared to some of the other figures, and especially compared to some of the other goblins, just because the articulation is hindered by how big these armor pieces are. And, you know, especially with him trying to wield this huge hammer, he's not going to be able to lift this over his head or pose over his head with the gauntlets in order to really make him utilize that weapon. And he looks much smaller, other than his head, without the shoulder pauldrons. Although he looks really cool with the shoulder pauldrons, his range of motion is very limited. So once I put these two big old shoulder pauldrons on, makes him, can look at how meatier he almost looks as a facade, because these things are just so large that you can't really see underneath, but you infer that he's bigger. So once they're on, he can barely move his arms now, so really kind of limits him. So if you're just going to put him on the shelf and not really in an action pose, and you're just going to kind of have him standing there. This looks great. Look at that size with the pauldrons on. Looks awesome. But functionally speaking, it doesn't look that great. In terms of his hip articulation, it's about less than 90 degrees with forward flexion, mainly because of the sculpt here. He can kick backwards pretty well, actually more than he can go forwards, because the articulation, or the sculpt isn't hindering the articulation. He should be able to do the splits. Yeah, he'll be able to easily do the splits. So there you go, Van Damme style. And he's got single jointed knees, but it goes about 90 degrees. He's got, looks like a forward pinford rocker on the front here, but this thing spins all the way around. So it's got good range of motion there. Actually, it's not a forward pinford rocker. It's just this is their form of their ankle. So it can spin around. It can flex that forward. It can extend that far back. But, oh, it does have a forward pinford rocker. There you go. So it can ankle rock, which, so really great motion, range of motion from the ankles. So again, this character looks great, but the fun factor is limited by his posability. So if you like goblins, you know, he's a goblin and you got to add him to your collection. But if you're not that big into goblins, I'd probably say pass, because he's just hard to pose, because he has all these things on. Now, if you don't want to, you don't necessarily need to have these things on, you know, when you're actually displaying them and playing with them. And then I guess the fun factor is there again, but he looks much cooler with the pauldrons on than he does without them. So, all right, thanks for watching. See you next time.